Why do you trust the Cardinals? The Cardinals signed a running back, and Mike Chappell, who's covered the Indianapolis Colts since 1984, is going to tell me what Hard Knocks in season was all about. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Here we go.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every damn day, free and available on all platforms. You know the drill. You're here every day and listen. If this is your first time listening, thank you. If it's your second time this week listening, thank you. I ask you, why not make it a third time? Because we are ramping up to what's going to be one of the most interesting question marks surrounding foundation, strength in questioning. Nailed it. We don't know what the hell is going to go on in 2022. We don't know. We're starting to see holes get filled on the roster. Talk about one that happened yesterday. The Cardinals are going to be a part of Hard Knocks in season during the 2022 season. I'm going to ask Mike Chappell, who's covered the Indianapolis Colts for CBS in Indy since 1984, what the hell it was like last year when the Colts were on Hard Knocks in season as they unceremoniously were booted from the playoffs in a road loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But first, I ended yesterday's live pod with what I wanted to talk about today, and that is why, for those that do, why do you trust the Arizona Cardinals? And I'm going to play devil's advocate here. You know my thoughts on the organization, how it's run, the people in place to run said organization, etc. But let me put on my rose-colored glasses, my Stockholm syndrome, attire to say, you know what? I trust the Arizona Cardinals. Why? Okay. I got nothing since before 2000. I got nothing. Even though Kwame Lassiter, who passed away a couple years ago, he introduced me into radio. He gave me my first chance. He was beloved in the city of Phoenix and the other stops along the way for him. He and Pat Tillman were teammates. He told me stories like Kwame Lassiter was one of the greatest men I've ever met. He was humble and not. He was confident. He taught me the ins and outs of football. Like I knew, we don't know football. I still don't even, the football players and football coaches are all geniuses when it comes to the game of football, okay? Kwame taught me a little piece. Now, coming back to the Arizona Cardinals, now, me defending the people who defend the Arizona Cardinals, I would say, well, obviously they drafted Larry Fitzgerald. Okay, got it. Sure, absolutely. Larry Fitzgerald, one of the best of all time. The best the best professional player to come out of the state, to be in an Arizona uniform of the four majors. I mean, maybe Diana Taurasi can kind of make him chase that a little bit because she has a handful of rings and is maybe the best WNBA player to ever play. But, you have the Super Bowl run. So they made a Super Bowl within the last 20 years. Okay, that's one. So that's two. They had some good teams, drafted Patrick Peterson, 2015 NFC Championship game run, 13-3. They took a chance on Kurt Warner first, then Carson Palmer, Bruce Arians years. Okay, so over the last 20 years, they've been irrelevant for, let's say half. Let's say 10 of 20 years they were relevant. Okay, so we're giving them 10 years out of 20 of relevancy. That's more than some NFL franchises. That's more than some. I'm trying here. That's more than some. The issue I have with the front office and with Michael Bidwell and Steve Keim, the issues I have, and it's hard for me to comprehend why people don't share these in more potency than fans do is they run this organization like they've won 5 Super Bowls. They run this organization like they always make the right choice, and their choices have yielded multiple Super Bowls. That's the way that this organization is run. Steve Keim being in power still is truly, if you're looking from 2013 to now, is truly laughable. There was somebody that tweeted me, you know what? I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to do this right now because it was a great tweet, and I forgot who tweeted it out. It's right here. Somebody tweeted out a perfect example. Jason Cake at JASCAK on Twitter said, Keim reminds me of a baseball hitter with an abysmal batting average but home run power. He has so many strikeouts in the draft, but he did make the Carson Palmer trade, the Chandler Jones trade, and the Hopkins trade. I think that's right. I think that's a good comparison. Thank you, Jason Cake. That's a good comparison. I wonder if your last name is Cake. Truly, I wonder. What's the derivation of cake? Not like eggs and sugar and milk and stuff, but like that doesn't matter. That's a good way to put it. I guess you could say what I say about Cliff Kingsbury for Steve Keim is that they can put together a great trailer of a movie, but the movie's not great. Cliff Kingsbury has some masterful moments as head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He does. Play calling, namely. Not so much timeout usage, more play calling, namely. Steve Keim has made some exemplary moves as the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not going to give him credit for DeAndre Hopkins specifically because there are rumblings that that was a owner-to-owner deal and not Steve Keim having anything to do with it. But just like Cliff Kingsbury, I could say, and you could say, that Steve Keim has put together a great movie trailer, but the movie's not awesome. The movie's never won any awards. The movie's never been nominated for any awards. And I think that's about right. But if you're going to defend the Arizona Cardinals, as a lot of people do, I guess it's palatable to mention that they've had a little playoff success. They made 1 Super Bowl in the last 20 years, which is a lot more than others. And, they've been relevant for 10 out of the last 20 years. I think that's it. I mean, thank God that segment's over. But all joking aside, Steve Keim has made some good moves, and I think it's just been marred by the last 2 halves of the last 2 seasons. And I think that sticks more in my head with recency bias also not being a fallacy in this case, but being more of the rule and not the exception to the rule. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Coming up next, the Arizona Cardinals sign a running back. Who is it? Is it a good fit? I'll talk about both next. Locked On Cardinals. First, Athletic Greens AG1. So I'm really trying to eat and ingest healthier things overall. Our next partner has a product that I use literally every day, and I started taking AG1 because I was, I need something to go with my Built Bars. I didn't want to make eggs every day, and I didn't want to take 48 vitamins and go to 48 different vitamin stores to get them. And AG1, Athletic Greens, has me covered, okay? Let me just run down these facts. First of all, it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it's got you covered. Less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. And remember, this is powder, water, cup, drink, money. You're good to go. It supports better sleep quality and recovery. It supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing with the best things. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products, and it's based on the latest science, which helps a lot. Always being cutting edge. It's got constant product iterations and third-party testing. Okay, to make it easy, Athletic Greens has got you 100% covered because it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup. Remember, I did this. 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. You don't see how expensive gas is? You don't need that. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up your ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Second segment, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. The Arizona Cardinals have signed Darrel Williams, backup running back from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I can go through the numbers, handful of 100 yards, 500 or 600 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. Let me tell you what Darrel Williams is. He is a perfect RB2 coming from a system that knows how to score touchdowns. That's the most important part about Darrel Williams. And all right, I'm going to do this later. All right. I'm just going to bring you here. I'm just going to bring you in because I went super long in my first segment. That's my bad. How's it going?
How you doing?
Good, man. I'm thanks for taking some time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you back and just say it's like the final segment, and then I'll cut it up later.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. All right, final segment, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. We covered why people should trust the Arizona Cardinals front office. I was playing devil's advocate. Darrel Williams is now an Arizona Cardinal, and why I think he's a perfect RB2 to take off some of the load for James Conner so he could play in all 17 weeks of the 2022 NFL season. For those that missed it, the Arizona Cardinals are going to be featured in Hard Knocks in season for their second installment in 2022. It's going to open up a lot of eyes to what I hope we don't see, which is a pseudo nightmare situation with Cliff Kingsbury, head coach. There's somebody here that knows a lot more about this and the experience of Hard Knocks in season, much more than we do here in the Valley. And I'm going to bring him in right now. And that is the one and only Mike Chappell. This guy has been covering the Colts in Indianapolis for one less year than I've been on the planet. And I say that with respect, not with any sort of backhandedness. I promise you that. Mike Chappell at Mike M Chappell 51 on Twitter for CBS in Indy. Let me ask you, first of all, thanks for joining me, Mike. I really appreciate you taking some time.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about it. The Colts in a vacuum last year. What we remember from thousands of miles away on the West Coast is the loss in Jacksonville. That's what we remember. The kind of petering out, and this is not a piling on by any stretch, because remember Christmas night when seemingly it was the replacements with Keanu Reeves playing the Arizona Cardinals, and the Colts took care of business on the road in the bright lights. What was Hard Knocks in season like initially, and then go on your diatribe? Does this have any effect? Did it have any effect on the outcome of the 2021 NFL season?
When it was first announced that they were going to be on it, I wasn't in favor of it, just as a guy who covers the team, because then you have to watch. I mean, I'd watch anyway, but you have to watch whatever night it was, Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember what night it was. Wednesdays, I think it was. And then because you always thought something would come up. Somebody says something, there was something controversial, and then you got more work to do. So that was selfish. But as it turned out, it did show the inner workings of the team, but more so it showed personalities. And this team has a lot of very good personalities. DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Darius Leonard. And you get to see that, which we don't get that kind of access, certainly not now with the prior COVID restrictions. Right. But you really don't get to see that. And this gave the team a chance to show who they are as an organization with the owner, with Frank Reich, with Chris Ballard. So I think from that angle, it worked. It really did. It showed you these guys are more than just 10 tackles a game or, Jonathan Taylor, 1,800 yards. So that was good. I thought that near the end that it sort of went over the top of some players. They sort of got, they started playing to the camera. I thought, but that's probably natural. In retrospect, I really don't think it had anything to do with the tail off at the end. I think this team was flat out tired, fatigued for a lot of reasons. COVID entered the picture late, and I think that took some starch out of the team. But as far as hard knocks, I really don't think you can say, boy, if they hadn't done that, they build on Arizona by beating the Raiders in Jacksonville. I don't.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's interesting because Hard Knocks is kind of looked at as, oh, sweet. Oh, wait. It's like, okay, awesome. They chose us. Why? I know we fit the protocol here if you're talking about the team, but, winning franchises, it's interesting. Hard Knocks has been around for a long time. There was some fatigue. I still remember the Chad Johnson getting cut by Joe Philbin. Like, it used to be super invasive before we knew what super invasive was, because it was kind of before social media and all that stuff. Now it's like real football fans watch this for exactly what you're talking about, to separate and to see a behind-the-scenes kind of thing on some of their favorite players with their favorite team. And for that, I completely understand it. Mike Chappell joining me here on Locked On Cardinals at mchappell51. He's been covering the Colts since they came to Indy in '84, doing the Fox 59 and CBS4 Sports. Member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee. We could do 2.5 hours on that. I'm going to save you from that. I'm going to keep it Hard Knock-centric. The Colts and the Cardinals are pseudo-similar in one way and vastly different in another. I'm going to start with the latter first. Vastly different because Chris Ballard is looked at as the best drafting GM that we've seen in the last decade. It seems like he doesn't miss. Even trading for DeForest Buckner and giving up that pick that ended up being Javon Kinlaw ended up working out. Darius Leonard, like, it goes on and on. Jonathan Taylor being the second-round pick. Steve Keim, the antithesis, the other side of the spectrum, even though he drafted Kyler Murray. But there's a lot of question marks surrounding why these teams aren't better, why they haven't taken that next leap. And we saw with Phillip Rivers last year, they could have won that game a handful of times and it just didn't happen. What was there, a 4th and 200 that Buffalo had to convert? Why haven't the Colts gotten there? Like, what is it? Why haven't they gotten there? Because I feel it here in Phoenix.
Quarterback. It's quarterback. They've been running uphill since Andrew Luck retired. Mm-hmm. The third preseason game in 2019, out of the blue, completely out of the blue, and they've had a very difficult time recovering from that. This roster is as strong top to bottom as it's been probably since 2012, maybe. Let's go back to the Manning years.
Yeah.
But what they don't have is stability at quarterback, and they'll start with Matt Ryan this year. He'll be Frank Reich's 5th different starting quarterback in as many years. That's crazy. You can't build a roster that way. You can't build a team that way. And they just haven't been able to get it done. Again, I think Chris Ballard's done a great job. Now, the one mistake they made, oh, by the way, was trading for Carson Wentz last year. And most people were, myself included, were in favor of it. But you had those doubts because there were warning signs from Philadelphia. You hear unnamed sources, lack of leadership, whatever. But he was viewed as perhaps the long-term answer. And it didn't work. It just didn't work for a lot of reasons. And now they're reloading again with Matt Ryan, who's just turned 37. And that's just not the way. Every year you can't go in there and find, okay, Jacoby Brissett. And then, we'll go get Phillip Rivers for a year, although they thought with 2 years, 1 year. Carson Wentz, now Matt Ryan. And, you could have argued a draft or two ago they could have, instead of trading for Buckner, they could have traded up and gotten one of the quarterbacks, mm-hmm. but they didn't. But until they get the quarterbacks settled, it's just a struggle. I think if Ryan's got they've got 2 years left on his contract, and I think the idea is maybe find that young quarterback in next year's draft. It's a deep draft for quarterbacks, and then bring that rookie in next year and let him learn behind Ryan and Nick Foles. Remember, they signed Nick Foles as a backup as well.
Right.
But they just need the quarterback to be better. They were within obviously a game or two. They've won one of their last 2 games last year. They're in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And we have a totally different discussion. So they just need Ryan to be better and more consistent. Like Chris Ballard told us at the end of the season, he told Carson Wentz, make the layups. He made that hero throw to, I think it was Des Patman in the back of the end zone against Arizona. But make the easy plays. Keep the chains moving, and then occasionally make the great throw. So, but until you get to quarterback situations, you guys are going to find that out now as well. What if Kyler Murray goes off the reservation? What do you do? So until you get that thing settled, long term, you're struggling every year.
That's why I asked you that question, and you did not disappoint. Mike Chappell, CBS, has been covering the Colts since '84. He's seen some stuff, okay? And the reason why I asked you that question specifically is because if Rome is burning, at least the Cardinals have Kyler Murray now, okay? And I'm going to ask you one more follow-up about Hard Knocks. I'm really intrigued, but like the Cardinals and the Colts roster is almost like inverse, like the Cardinals have the quarterback, they've got some pieces, but they don't have anything else. Loosely defined, the offensive line is something that I ask a lot of questions about. Ask Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck how important an offensive line is, or lack thereof.
No question.
Andrew Luck may still be playing, and then Chris Ballard went on his journey. He's like, that's not going to be the problem anymore. It's going to be Ryan Kelly, and then it's going to be et cetera. And Ryan Kelly's been out of Alabama. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, finally they're changing their ways. Steve Keim hasn't necessarily. So you see, Cardinals fans, 25 teams, like I've been telling you, would trade for Kyler Murray tomorrow. That should be all you need to know about the Cardinals retaining his services. No, he's not completely mature yet. No, he's not the best leader yet. But he's better than most, and better than most is what makes Pro Bowlers in the NFL. Okay, so I do want to ask you one question before I get you out of here. Thank you, Mike Chappell, for joining me on your busy day. Inside the season, Hard Knocks, the Hard Knocks version, is there anything that surprised you? Is there anything that was like, whoa, I didn't know they were going to do that? Like, I want to prepare listeners, viewers, for exactly what the hell we're going to see, if anything. I mean, maybe it's going to be a lot of hype, and then it's just going to be, oh, cool, that was fun. We see J.J. Watt joking around, and we see some practice stuff. Was there anything they showed that you weren't expecting them to show?
No, not really, and that's why I thought it worked. I think if you add, it was personality stuff that they would do a 5 or 7 minute, I say puff piece, but of the player in his home with his family, which is always nice. And then, like the last 20 minutes, my son insists on calling. Then the last, 10 or 15 minutes, it's that week's game. So not really, but again, it served a purpose. And I have to believe, I don't know how your guys' structure is there. Jim Irsay was really for this. I think an owner sees any publicity like this, good publicity, it shows the franchise. And this franchise has got a lot of things to show. If I'm a coach or a GM, I say hell no. I just think all coaches and GMs, especially coaches, they don't like distractions. They just don't. So I don't want to speak, for Frank Reich, but I just think coaches would prefer not. Now, I think they weren't totally against it. I think when Jim Irsay and they had the meeting, they said, well, okay. And from what I was told, the team has the final say on what gets shown. And I don't think they left a lot on the editing room floor. I think for the most part, what you saw is what they put together. So it'll be good. I don't think it was a distraction. I don't think it impacted the end of the season at all. I just think that if you ask Frank back whenever they decided, Frank, you want to do this? I think he's, I'd rather not. Mm-hmm. And maybe Ballard as well. But I just think that the positive outweighed any possible negatives. And I think it was a positive experience. We saw sides of players that we don't always see, the fans certainly don't see. So I don't know that there was a downside at all. So, maybe with the personalities you have out there, it'll be different. And Frank Reich was the perfect guy to do it because he's he's just low key and even keeled, and he's not going to drop any F-bombs or go off on players. It's just going to be, this is how we do things. Some would say that's boring for an HBO thing like this, but it works. So by and large, it was positive, and hopefully for the Cardinals it'll be the same.
Boring wins usually. Usually boring wins. Our head coach doesn't wear socks.
Boring wins.
That's all I know about him. That's all I know about him is that he doesn't wear socks. That's it. He's got a swanky place in Paradise Valley. Mike Chappell, thank you so much for joining me, man. He's covering the Colts for a long time. Fox 59 and CBS4 in Indy. Really appreciate you taking some time. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.